shpesh është e dominuar nga vendimet që I marrin fuqitë e mëdha botërore siç është Amerika. Andaj kemi ardhur këtu në Amerikë që t'i pyesim diplomatët amerikanë se deri në çmas janë të interesuar që ta zgjidhin çështjen e Kosovës dhe kanë përkushtim për te, në kohën kur ky vend, ky shtet Amerika, është shumë e preokupuar me luftën kundër terrorizmit dhe linjën e mesme.
Mr. Wisner, your secretary now has been telling me how much work you do. Is Kosovo your part-time job, basically?
Well, I've been asked by the United States government, by the Secretary of State, to come and play a role representing the United States in the final status talks that Marty Ahtisaari has been leading now for the best part of a year. It's a busy undertaking, but I have the rest of my life, which is my professional activities for the American International Group.
How did your last trip go? What's your impression from the last meetings you've had?
My last visit to the region, which took me to Kosovo, took me to Serbia, and incidentally to Croatia, brief meeting with Mr. Ahtisaari in Finland, was a good visit. It was a useful one from my point of view. While I was in Pristina, I had a chance to meet the broadest cross-section of life, of people in Kosovo, from the unity team through mayors, intellectuals, parliamentarians, members of the government, to talk about not only how we get from here to a final status settlement, but what happens afterwards. How does Kosovo understand the changed environment that it will be living in?
And did you
and
get
how
answers?
does it prepare itself for the future?
Did you get answers from Kosovo leadership as to how will Kosovo look afterwards?
We certainly had some good talks about that. It was very important to me. But just to finish your last question, I had quite a different set of talks about in Belgrade about the end and what we all need to do to maintain stability in the region, peace and security. So all in all, it was a good visit and much ground was covered.
But the discourse at the moment from Serbia is that Mr. Koštunica is saying out loud that will not accept independence, even if that is what Ahtisaari recommends. So what will happen if Serbia will not accept any form of independence?
Well, I appreciate the fact that Prime Minister Koštunica has taken that position. In fact, I would expect any Serbian leader, I'd anticipate any Serbian leader would stand by his nation's long-standing views and commitments. And Prime Minister and the President, no Serbian leader is going to break ranks on that subject. But I think it's a different matter for the United States to look at our friends in Serbia with whom we want to develop the strongest possible relationship and say that in the context of Serbia, moving now to be part of Europe, moving to be part of the Western family, that Serbia has obligations to build and maintain stability, security, and progress in Southeastern Europe. And that means accommodating the political settlements that will flow, in Kosovo's case, from Ahtisaari's recommendations.
Is the United States afraid of radicalization in Serbia? Is the United States afraid of the Serbs?
No, that is to overstate the case. The United States has long fought for, argued for, supported the emergence of democracy in Serbia. After the terrible times of Slobodan Milosevic, to see democratic parties be in a majority and move forward. We want to see that consolidated. We want to see Serbia continue to evolve and deepen its democratic experience. Now, I happen to have quite a lot of confidence in it, but there are going to be elections coming up, and those elections will be closely fought.
Considering U.S. involvement in the Middle East at the moment and with so much going on, how important is Kosovo for this administration?
Kosovo's important. Kosovo's important. The United States has spent now many years dealing with the issue of Kosovo. and dealing with the issue of the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. Kosovo, to our way of thinking, is the last piece in the jigsaw puzzle, and it needs to be put in place so you can get stability in southeastern Europe. That region can integrate itself through the rest of Europe into Western democratic structures and the Western security family, get into NATO. This is all where we want it to go. We want to see southeastern Europe move ahead. And for that to happen, Serbia, Kosovo, the Balkans, got to get sorted out. There's the core American interest, but on the ground, we have 1,200 American soldiers. We have spent heavily. We will spend more. We have made Kosovo an important American national interest. Despite other obligations, distractions, as you put it, around the world, we're determined to see our work through.
But will the United States have the teeth to actually implement whatever is decided in the end? Whatever that is, to implement it, does it have diplomatic energy to still?
Well, first of all, let's remember Kosovo was assigned as a responsibility of the international community under 1244. The United States is not the only player. There are other players whose voices are extremely important. The European Union and its component states are going to be critical to the future of Kosovo. Russia is a member of the contact group and a member of the Security Council. Its voice is important, so we're not alone. But if you ask me, is America determined to do the right thing and get on with southeastern Europe and the Balkans, get on with the development of a relationship with Serbia, move ahead and build a strong Kosovo of the future? The answer is clearly yes.
Then what if in the end Serbia sees that there is no other option but the independence is pushed, and in the end what Serbia pushes for is the division of Kosovo? How much will the United States insist on the principle that Kosovo is not divided?
Well, you've used a number of words in your question that I'd have to slow you down and remind you that we're working for a final status decision, and that's going to have to come from Marty Ahtisaari. And I'm not answering the question as you put it, narrowly stated. What I would say, though, is that the very organizing principles of the contact group from day one would be that Kosovo, whatever the final status decision will be Kosovo. No division of it, no slicing it up, no melding of Kosovo with Albania or some other piece of territory. The territorial configuration of southeastern Europe is the one that ought to remain in place and no departure from it. And we're part of the contact group. That's strongly an American view.
Will you put in then more troops if it's needed to ensure that is exactly implemented?
Well, I think the troop dispositions at the moment are quite adequate for any contingency that the NATO commanders can foresee. If their calculations need to be adjusted, we'd all take a look at them.
You spoke about Russia as well being a part of the process.
That's correct.
And what if Russia will not accept Ahtisaari's recommendation in the Security Council? How do you imagine the diplomatic process will go here in?
Yeah, I think that's still a bit of a hypothetical reach. You know that I wouldn't go there, because if you remember, we've been working as a contact group to resolve this issue of final status and support Mr. Ahtisaari's effort to resolve final status now for nearly a year. Russia's been at every meeting, participated in all our deliberations, and what we've begun together with Russia, worked together with Russia, I'd like to think we're going to try to finish with
But
Russia.
Russia wants a compromise.
So I'm not predicting a breakdown in the Russian contact group understanding. I think it would be wrong to jump to that conclusion.
But Russia has insisted it wants a compromise. Do you see a compromise happening at the moment, realistically?
Well, there are compromises and compromises. There's a compromise between Serbia's assertion of a commitment to autonomy and the majority Albanian view that independence is the outcome. That's pretty hard to put a bridge over that one and find a compromise. But is there a compromise on the critical attributes of final status? The municipalities and the protections the Serbian community would have, the rights and protections of the church and cultural protections, the rights of minorities as they would be factored into a new Kosovar constitution. There's lots of room for creative compromise making, and that's precisely the sort of compromise lines that Mr. Adisari has been pursuing.
There is a concern that the final status agreement will be unclear, that Adisari's recommendation may be unclear. How should we address that?
I don't know that Adisari. The Adisari I know is a man who is always clear. So I would think whatever he concludes, you're going to understand exactly what it means.
If no final status is recommended, that as final in his recommendation, and it is left up to countries to recognize what they want, will there be a crisis? Will we see unclarity?
First of all, you're leaping ahead and making assumptions about how Adisari will draft a report that he hasn't even finished writing yet. So, can I suggest politely that be a bit patient?
How patient?
Patient. Let Adisari do his work. Put it down on the table, then let's think about exactly how to respond to it. I am not predicting a crisis in the situation.
When do you think the status will be resolved?
Well, the objective has been from the beginning to try to seek a resolution by the end of 2006. And that continues to be the stated preference of the United States and indeed of the contact group when the ministers met in New York in late September. Is there a possibility that there could be some brief delay if there were a Serbian parliamentary election? I'm not ruling that out. But let me say the objective remains the end of the year. And it's impossible to think about Serbian elections because there aren't any Serbian elections to think about yet. So the objective is still end of 2006.
How do you imagine international presence to be in Kosovo after the status is resolved?
Oh, there will be a substantial international presence in Kosovo after final status. It'll take several forms, and all of them have been thought through and discussed with the Kosovar leadership. There will be an international civilian presence, whose job it will be to make certain that the terms of the Security Council arrangement, the commitments made by the parties under that Security Council arrangement are respected. Notably, all of the commitments surrounding the protection of the communities in Kosovo. So you will have that sort of oversight protection. But the administration, the management of Kosovo will be in the hands, if there is a final status settlement, whatever way it turns out. The internal administration of Kosovo will be a Kosovar responsibility, which is not the case today with UNMIK. Second, there will be a international security presence. There are today a substantial NATO force that will continue. Third, there will be a very important police and justice mission from the outside to strengthen those functions of the Kosovar administration that need further work, and Kosovo wants further work. Fourth, there will be a substantial amount of economic involvement from the external community inside of Kosovo to support the development of Kosovo.
Last time that NATO and Russia had rift about Kosovo was in '99 when the Russian troops marched into the Pristina airport because of misunderstanding. Are we likely to see a similar drama or diplomatic drama in the run-up to
I don't think so.
decision?
Certainly I can't imagine Russian forces and allied forces all being deployed again. I'm not sure the analogy stands up.
Okay, finally I have to ask you, was it a slip of tongue last week when you said that you want to resolve the Kosovo independence, or were you really honest about what's going to be the final decision?
The point I made when I spoke to the press in Pristina is the United States is committed to seeking final status settlement for Kosovo and to try to get that done by the end of 2006. That's my point of view, and that of my government. I haven't departed from it for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. Wisner.
Okay, good.
You were involved in the Kosovo war from the early on. As we come closer to the resolution and the finale of Kosovo status, how do you think this will be played out in the bigger picture, from looking at it from here?
In the long run, Kosovo will be an independent country, part of a peaceful, integrated Balkans that includes Serbia, Macedonia, Albania, Montenegro, Bosnia-Herzegovina.
What do you mean in the long run?
The long run depends on what the Serbs do. Will they accept the reality and look to the future of Serbia, which is part of the European Union, or will they cling to a mythic version of the past and deny reality? If they deny reality and try to hold on to Kosovo, they will lose both. They won't be able to retain Kosovo, but they will also lose their chance to join Europe. By Europe, I mean the European Union. And because of the special ties between Serbia and Greece, there's a tremendous opportunity here for Serbia to have an era of prosperity, but only if they face reality. That's up to the leaders of Serbia. The new constitution was a real step in the wrong direction, but it's not going to slow down the efforts of Marti Ahtisaari and Ambassador Frank Wisner. It just isolates the Serbs. And I feel very sad about this. I've often been accused of being anti-Serb. This isn't true. I was anti-Milosevic. The current leadership of Serbia has a historic responsibility to face up to the reality. But in Serbia itself, as well as the Serbs of Kosovo, they insist on looking backwards. And to some extent, this is also still happening among some of the Bosnian Serb leaders in Banja Luka. It's a tragedy for the people of Serbia.
But they would say, some critics would say, how would they move forward if Karadzic and Mladic are not caught yet?
I agree that Karadzic and Mladic have to be caught. I've always said that. I've written and said repeatedly that the failure to capture Karadzic and Mladic is the major failure of the West.
So how come the biggest power on earth could not catch somebody like Karadzic and Mladic?
Because NATO didn't make a serious enough effort to catch Karadzic and Mladic. Because Serbian military officials protected Mladic and Serbian monks protected Karadzic. So while I think the NATO failure is enormous, and I'm very upset about it, the Serbs also bear a huge responsibility here. Thank God that Milosevic was delivered to The Hague, where destiny and history caught up with him. If he hadn't gone to The Hague, he would have tried to return to power. And God knows what would have happened if he had done that.
What do you say to the people who think actually it was the diplomats and the lack of political will who let Karadzic and Mladic get away?
It was the lack of political will. I agree with that, but I don't know what you mean by diplomats.
Meaning that you were part of an administration.
Look, are you going to suggest again that I made a deal with Karadzic? Because I'm tired of hearing this piece of crap, which is put out by Karadzic, and for you, from Pristina, to repeat that crap is just ridiculous. The fact is that we made no deal with Karadzic, but it was in Karadzic's interest to put that word out. Now, the failure to capture him was a failure of NATO. The responsibility for protecting him is a Bosnian Serb and a Serb responsibility. So let's get that very straight.
Thank you. What do you predict is the role of Russia going to be in the next coming months? How serious is Russia and China going to be about opposing Kosovo independence?
The real issue is Russia, not China. And Russia's problem is that they're trying to use Kosovo as an excuse for their own ambitions in Georgia. Their goal in Georgia is to overthrow Michael Saakashvili, the president of Georgia. And they're going to try to do that by claiming that whatever happens in Kosovo applies to Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which it doesn't, but the Russian position is it does, then try to make Abkhazia and South Ossetia independent mini-republics, like Republika Srpska before Dayton. That won't fly. It's not acceptable. And the United States, France, Britain, Germany, Italy have agreed they're not going to accept it.
But are they going to accept Russia's arguments at all during?
No, not a chance.
They're going to just ignore Russia? How is it going to be played out? They are a member of Security Council. When it comes to deciding, how do you predict it that they will be put aside, or how will it work?
The Russians will have to decide whether to agree to a resolution or veto a resolution. Chinese are not going to veto.
So what if they don't agree to a resolution? What happens then?
Then the Western powers will have to decide whether to override the Russians and just do it or not. The Russians, I don't think, will veto in the end, but if they do, we'll have a collision course with Russia, which we already have over Georgia.
But do you think Kosovo will be worth for this current administration to go on a rift with Russia? For the U.S. government? How do you predict how
the U.S. has made it absolutely clear that we will stand up to the Russians.
Even if it is about a small place like Kosovo?
It's the most critical, unresolved area of instability in Europe.
The Albanians are currently focusing their lobbying efforts in the U.S. Do you think they should be lobbying actually Brussels or even Russia?
That's up to them. I can't tell them where to lobby.
But how does diplomacy? Albanians currently do not have even an office, foreign offices abroad, to plead their case. Do you believe they are losing momentum at the moment?
History is on the side of Kosovo Albanians for the first time in 800 years. The horrible events of 1912 and 1989 are in the process of being reversed. Albanians are very understandably impatient to accelerate history. I share that impatience. I feel the administration, the Bush administration, was very wrong not to move in the first term. It would have been much easier to get Kosovo independence in 2002 than it is today. However, history is moving inexorably, unstoppably in the direction of the Kosovo Albanians, and they must be resolved. The most important thing they must show is that they will be open to the rights of the Serb minority. That's the number one issue.
Why has the issue of status resolvement been delayed since 1999? Who do you believe is responsible for that?
President Bush and his administration is responsible for the delay. They allowed it to happen, knowing full well that the United Nations and the European Union would never push it. The impetus for this action had to come from the United States, and the failure was appalling. And I had very intense arguments with Secretary of State Powell and his team about this. Ambassador Jones, Beth Jones, the Assistant Secretary of State, and the people surrounding her, all were inexcusably slow-moving.
So no matter what Kosovars would do, you think the delay was up to the Bush administration? Or was it at all up to Kosovars?
No, the Kosovars had no ability to move the process. They had been liberated from the Serbs in 1999. Milosevic was overthrown in September of 2000, but then nothing more happened for 4 years. And finally, when Condoleezza Rice became Secretary of State and Nick Burns became Undersecretary of State, and Burns had worked for me, he was at Dayton with me, we finally got some movement. And I credit Undersecretary Burns and Secretary Rice with the movement, and then they made a brilliant decision. They appointed Frank Wisner as the American envoy. Frank Wisner is one of the greatest diplomats of his generation. And Wisner has just mastered the issue, and he and Ahtisaari will push it forward. But the fault for the delay was entirely the first term of the Bush administration. And I argued this vigorously with Colin Powell and and Assistant Secretary Beth Jones. They were wrong, and now it's more difficult than it would have been 5 years ago.
Thank you.
What
What
would
would
you
you
say?
You know that.
What would you say to Albanians who feel they are losing the grounds in the bad image they're getting, bad press since the March riots and onward?
I think the Kosovar Albanians must recognize that their image is dependent on the way they treat the Serb minority. I know that the Serbs did not treat them well, and I know the desire for revenge is very great in that part of the world. However, we must move forward. Where is the Albanian Nelson Mandela, the person who says we must have truth and reconciliation? Where is the person who will look to the future the way Alija Izetbegović did in Bosnia, when on the final morning of the Dayton Agreement negotiations in 1995, he said to me, "This is not a perfect peace, and it is not a just peace, but we need peace, and I will go this route." Look at Bosnia today. It's doing much better than it did during the war. Nobody's been killed for 11 years. It's not perfect, but the troops went from 60,000 down to just a few thousand, and the country's at peace. All that is possible if two things happen. Belgrade recognizes that history will give Kosovo independence, and the Albanians recognize that with independence comes a responsibility to protect the minority. Each side must make a big concession. It's like South Africa, and Nelson Mandela was the great man who, after 27 years in jail, could come out of jail, unite the country, and reach out to the very people who put him in jail. Do you know that Nelson Mandela, when he was inaugurated as President of South Africa, invited as his personal guests to the inauguration the prison guards who had guarded him in prison? That was his gesture of reconciliation. Where is the Kosovar Nelson Mandela? Where is the Serb?
Such a figure does not exist.
What?
What if such a figure does not exist? What should be done in the Balkans?
Then you have to go forward. Such figures are very rare in history. Mandela's the greatest person in the world today, don't you think? I think he's the greatest person I ever met. But he is a model. You had one great leader in Belgrade, Djindjic, who was willing to reach out. And when he was murdered, it made it more difficult.
Do you believe Ahtisaari will advise independence in his final recommendation?
Ahtisaari will recommend independence.
You believe he will mention independence in his recommendation? He will mention it. He will not leave it up to countries to recognize or not. What
I
do you
don't
believe?
understand your question.
Do you think that independence will be one of his recommendations in the
Yes,
end
yes.
result?
Yes.
And what, if you're a realist, would you now say that Serbia will accept? What do you think, how do you predict it, knowing the countries, being in
Serbia,
the region so long? Do you believe Serbia will accept independence?
I expect Serbia will not accept independence. They will be forced to accept independence.
Do you believe
I don't think there are any
who
Serb...
will force them?
Let me...
Okay.
I don't think there will be any Serb leader who has the courage to get up and say Serbia should allow Kosovo to become an independent country. And this constitution makes it all the more difficult. But I think the international community will declare Kosovo has become an independent country, and then Serbia will have no choice.
International community as such is not one compact thing. What if some will not accept Kosovo independence immediately?
The only countries that matter here are the UN Security Council members, and as we've already discussed, the most important of those is Russia. Because Russia, if Russia uses the veto, we'll have an absolute crisis. And that crisis will extend far beyond Kosovo. It will extend to Russia's relations with Britain, France, the United States, Germany, and Italy, and it will extend to Georgia as well.
How long do you think it's going to take then?
I think this will be resolved in a few months. I'm
And
still
even
optimistic.
if the crisis happens?
I don't think it will. I can't believe the Russians are that stupid, but let's see. This is not about Kosovo for the Russians. The Russians don't give a damn about the Serbs. They care about Georgia. They are incredibly angry at Michael Saakashvili. They want to overthrow Michael Saakashvili.
So will the U.S. go on the side of Saakashvili to help if the Russians will say, we'll allow Kosovo independence, but we'll do what we want in Georgia?
The U.S. will not agree to that deal.
The U.S. has the energy now, with everything going on, to actually bother about what goes on in Georgia?
The U.S. will not accept that deal, according to what they've said publicly. They will not let a Security Council resolution be passed for Kosovo, which can be applied to Abkhazia and South Ossetia.
Final question. What do you believe Albanians should do one day after status is declared? How do you see the future holding from them? What would you advise them?
Reach out to the Bosnian Serbs and send them public messages that they want to live in peace with the Serbs. I know how difficult that is, but that's the only way to avoid continuing killing and rape and crimes forever.
What if the deal that Kosovo gets in the end is not much better what Bosnia got in the end? Would you believe that's good enough for Kosovo?
I don't know what you're talking about.
In a sense that...
I think Bosnia got a pretty good deal. Bosnia is independent, it's at peace, and there's complete economic relations between all of Bosnia. It was not partitioned, it's one country.
But what if the north behaves like Republika Srpska? If the north of Kosovo?
They won't have that status. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about two entities like Republika Srpska and the Federation.
But maybe the reality will be like that. The
don't-
north will continue acting like they are part of Serbia.
If you're talking about the northern
north.
Obstinas,
the north of Kosovo, basically.
if one of the Obstina is self-governing on local affairs, police, garbage collection, that's fine. That's the way systems work. If they have close economic relations with Serbia, that's fine too. I want to see an economic union of that whole area, and the whole area then join the rest of Europe.
Would you say Albania shouldn't worry, even if the north gets to run its own courts, its own police, its own economic affairs? The central Pristina government should not worry too much about this if this is a part of the end deal.
That's a very tough question, and the answer lies in the details. You said police, courts, and economic affairs. Those are three very different things. Local police, it's okay, but national, police that become part of a corrupt system, not so good. I drove from Sarajevo to Srebrenica last year. And when we went from the Federation to Srpska, we changed police escorts. And then Serb police escorted us to Srebrenica for the memorial services, which Boris Tadic came to his very great credit. And it was a remarkable sight. I'm not deluding myself. I know that those police are corrupt. On both sides of Bosnia, they're corrupt. I know what's going on there, more or less. But the system is allowed the country to be peaceful. Now, it's not perfect. It's corrupt. There are criminal gangs in all parts of Bosnia. And I know that's corrupt in Kosovo and Serbia as well, and Montenegro. The whole area is full of organized crime. But let's be clear about this. Our goal is not to fix every problem in the universe in one day with one UN resolution. It's to fix the status of Kosovo, and that status must be independence.
Is the U.S. afraid of the Serb radicals or radicalization of Serbia?
You have to ask the administration.
Delaying the talks because of the Serbian election, does it mean that the U.S. is a little bit wary of whether Serbia
You
may
have
be
to ask
radicalized?
I can't speak for the administration.
Okay. Finally, looking back at the years you were involved in Kosovo War in particular, is there anything you regret when you look back?
In Kosovo?
Yes.
I'm very clear on what I regret about Bosnia, which is that we weren't more aggressive. We should have done it earlier. We should not have agreed to Republika Srpska as the name of the Serb part of the country. That name was a bad name, and that was my mistake. We should have disarmed the Bosnian Serb army right away and integrated everyone, and we should have given more power to the center. So Bosnia, I'm very clear on. We could have done things better. But a lot of those problems have been fixed over time. In Kosovo, the biggest regret I have, and of course capturing Mladic Karadzic, that was the #1 problem. But that wasn't a problem of Dayton, that was a problem of implementation in Bosnia. Now, in regard to Kosovo, I think that by and large, the first phase, 98, 99, came out pretty well. Very few people were killed compared to Bosnia, very few. And it is true people were driven out of their homes and there were refugees for a while, but it wasn't that long a period of time, and there are no more refugees, and they went home very quickly. However, the colossal mistake of 2001, 2002, of the new Bush administration turning its back on Kosovo and not negotiating immediately final status when it would have been easier to do, is one we will pay for a long time to come. And we also had Prime Minister Djindjic, who was the closest thing Serbs have had to a visionary leader. And for his courage, he was assassinated.
Thank you.
You're tough.
Thank you. I try.
Yeah, well, you succeed.
Për amerikanët shkuam në Amerikë, ndërsa në pamundësi që të shkojmë në Rusi, për shkak se Rusia nuk i pranon dokumentat e UNMIK-ut, erdhëm këtu te zyrja ruse në Prishtinë që t'i pyesim se çka mendojnë për statusin dhe sa do të luftojnë për Kosovën në Këshillin e Sigurimit.
Mr. Dronov, thank you for having us. You first came to Kosovo in 1998 in KDOM, with KDOM in Prizren. How would you like the status to be a year from now?
I want the status to be such so both Pristina and Belgrade accept it. And that will mean a sustainable solution and peace and stability in the region.
But so far it looks like both sides are not coming to any agreement. They don't have common points on the political status. What do you think then will happen if both sides cannot agree on a compromise and common solution?
That's the less desired scenario. We believe that there is chances of getting a compromise solution, and in fact this is the only solution which Russia could accept.
What is a compromise solution for Russia? What does it mean?
I will not give you any ready-made recipe. It is a process, the process of negotiations and the process of trying to make a step in the direction of each other. It is very difficult, I know, for both parties, Pristina and Belgrade. But if you want to reach a good solution, which will hold for some time at least, and if you want stable Balkans with good neighborly relations, you have to strive for that.
So what would this be? What would Serbia have to give up a little bit and compromise, and what would Kosovo have to give up a little bit and compromise? How do you see this diplomatically, basically?
Well, actually, this is more the question to the leadership in Pristina and Belgrade. Russia is a part of the contact group, and we are trying to make our contribution to the process. We support Mr. Ahtisaari's efforts. The contact group made a strong statement, the foreign ministries or ministers of the contact group made a strong statement in New York on the 21st of September. So this is our role. We expect the proposal from Mr. Ahtisaari's office. We are ready to work on this basis. And we think that it should be the basis for continuation of the negotiations.
You accept the proposal of Mr. Ahtisaari, whatever that proposal will end up to be?
I'm sorry, the contact group does not have to accept the proposal of Mr. Ahtisaari. We will work, we will examine it, we will make our comments and our suggestions, and when this proposal is ready, when it passes the contact group, our belief is that it should become a basis for the future negotiations, for continued negotiations between Pristina and Belgrade.
So you support Mr. Ahtisaari, but you do not carte blanche support his decision in the end, his recommendation?
I'm sorry, yes, exactly. That's not a decision by Mr. Ahtisaari, but it is a recommendation. He has the task from the United Nations Security Council. We have to see what he produces, and we will work on that basis.
Do you believe Kosovo issue in the end will go to the Security Council?
Well, actually, this is the only way to go within the legal frameworks, within the framework of international law. Kosovo issue, to our mind, should be decided by the United Nations Security Council. Otherwise, it's a very dangerous precedent.
Okay, so how important is Kosovo for Russia?
Kosovo important is in many instances and in many ways. First of all, of course, Balkans has always been an extremely important area for Europe in general, and Russia is an important part of European security architecture, let's say. We are very interested, so this area, the Balkans in general and Kosovo, would become contributor to the stability of the whole European continent. And to achieve that, we need a real sustainable solution for Kosovo.
But bottom line is Kosovo for you worth getting into a rift with other members of Security Council, worth fighting for in the Security Council?
I would like to say that we are not fighting for any territory, so everybody understands. We're not fighting for Kosovo, and I don't think there is any reason to say about the rift or division within the Security Council, etc. Because everybody has its position, national position, and every country is entitled to that.
But what is your position?
To us, Kosovo is not an isolated case. Whatever they say about the precedent or non-precedent, to us, maybe history of Kosovo is a little bit different from other places of the world, but every crisis in the world has its own history, and it's somehow unique. But we're not speaking about that. We're speaking about the comprehensive and comprehensive ways to settle those crises, and those ways have to be within the legal framework.
You talked about Kosovo not being an isolated case for Russia. Can you then, for an audience that doesn't know the Caucasus, explain a little bit about the conflict in Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Nagorno-Karabakh? Can you explain what is going on there?
Yes, just a little bit, because it will take too much time if we go back in the history. What's
the situation at the moment?
At the moment, okay. Those areas are the areas of so-called frozen conflicts. I'll talk about South Ossetia and Abkhazia. Those republics are the part of a bigger country which is named Georgia. Those republics do not recognize being part of Georgia. They now live separately from Georgia. They have their government, they have their parliament, they have their democratic process, they have elected officials, elected parliamentarians.
Do they want to be part of Russia?
In fact, we did have some time ago the parliaments of those let's say not the state, but republics, unrecognized republics. They applied to Russia with a request to be part of Russia, to be accepted in Russia, etc. But we respect the principle of territorial integrity of Georgia, and that is why the decision and the ways on how the decision of Kosovo is so important.
If Kosovo gets independent, will you ask for independence of Abkhazia?
We will not ask for anything. It's up to Abkhazian people to ask for their independence or for their integration into Georgia. But again, we fully respect the territorial integrity of our neighbors.
Let me rephrase my question. If Kosovo's independence is recognized by Western states, will Russia recognize the Abkhazian independence?
I understand. I don't think anybody is in a position to say what this or that country will do in the future in case of, let's say, Kosovo independence, etc. The only thing I can tell you now that if that recognition, unilateral recognition, without the United Nations Security Council resolution, will happen to Kosovo, it will set up a very dangerous precedent, which definitely will be followed by many people in the world, not only on the borders of the Russian Federation, but I think also elsewhere in the world.
So why should the political status of one region like Kosovo be hostage to what goes on elsewhere in the world?
It is not the hostage, it is the question of either universal principles or double standards. If something is allowed to one entity, let's say, in the world, there is no reason why the other entities cannot use the same rules.
But
that's why
do you agree there are different situations, different historic, geographical situations for each region?
Absolutely, there are differences in the situation, but again, the principles of a solution of the crisis must be universal. Otherwise, there will be chaos, there will be no international law, there will be no basis for normal resolution of any crisis.
Then, according to this principle, you would like Kosovo to be a part of Serbia?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We've never said that. We say that
you support the territorial integrity, right? That means Kosovo being a part of Serbia.
Well,
right.
Montenegro and Serbia divided themselves, and that was acceptable for everybody. So now we have independent Montenegro, independent Serbia, and that's a wonderful way to deal with your neighbors and to your former integral parts. You have a consent of both parties. We will welcome any decision which will be accepted by the parties. We are not
speaking... But realistically, the parties, it's clear, cannot agree. This process started, it's clear the parties cannot agree. So what's the next step for Russia? The parties cannot agree, one decision has to be made. Will Russia stamp its foot and say that territorial integrity will be more important than any other principle?
We will see that. Again, I will not give you the answer right away to answer. We need to see what Mr. Ahtisaari brings up, and we need to continue negotiations between Pristina and Belgrade. We do not agree that every possibility for the compromise agreement is exhausted. And believe me, this is a very complicated case. You are speaking about the lives of the people, a lot of people, and you're also speaking about the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the other party. So it is tough, it is very difficult, but the world has seen more complicated problems actually, and somehow the decisions were made. And the history shows that only those decisions which are acceptable to both parties or to all the parties in the conflict and in the dispute, only those decisions which are acceptable for them can be sustainable and can bring peace and stability.
There's a perception, at least in this audience here, that Russia is the traditional friend of Serbia. Is that true?
It is, as well as a friend of Albania, for example. Traditional friend of Albania. And I'm very glad that a lot of people here in Kosovo have studied in Russia. And I go around pretty often and they talk to me in Russian. And you can't imagine what kind of feelings that raises in me. I really appreciate it.
If so, then what relations are more important to you? Good to remain good friends with Serbia or with Kosovo and Albania, for example?
We will remain friends with Serbia, we will remain friends with Kosovo Albanians, and we will remain staunch supporters of international law.
If Ahtisaari recommends independence and suddenly it will be, or if he doesn't recommend it and it will be up to countries to recognize it or what, or not, will Russia be the last one to recognize Kosovo's independence?
Well, I really don't have the answer to this question, and again, I would not like to prejudge what goes on. You always come to the worst case scenario, which we really don't like to consider at this moment. We really think that we should work on the positive note and continue to try to get a realistic but acceptable to everybody solution, which means compromise for everybody, but we think it can be reached.
Okay, let's go to a scenario that already happened. The last time that Russia and the Western world had a rift about Kosovo was in '99 when the Russian troops marched into the Pristina airport. Are we likely to see similar drama, if not a military one, a diplomatic drama over Kosovo again now?
Well, first of all, I don't make too much drama of Russian troops coming in here because it proved to be very effective, and we worked with our NATO colleagues here very well, frankly speaking. And the Russian troops and the Russian military brought a lot of advantages to Kosovo. I remember our hospital, which was where the extremely qualified doctors were treating Albanians, Serbs, Americans, Germans, and everybody else in Kosovo, and all of those people were lying in the same rooms, and there were no hostility.
But NATO did not know that the troops were going, or there were even words from American generals that Third World War III may have started, because there was a tension at that time.
I don't think that we did have too much of an advance warning from NATO also, and frankly speaking, I still consider those NATO bombings of Yugoslavia to be against the international law. It's our position, it never changed. But anyway, we got involved in Kosovo here militarily. We worked with our K4 friends. There is even a little monument to the Russian soldiers who died in Kosovo in those years. And I can tell you that not all of those deaths were due to the incidents. Some of our soldiers were killed. But anyway, if we speak of military standoff, I don't think there is any reason even to think about it now. Speaking about the political possibilities, the contact group proved that it can work together, and we can make progress, maybe step by step, not a breakthrough progress, but we're making progress every meeting of the contact group. So I believe this is the trend we should follow, and this is the way the Kosovo settlement should be done. It takes time, but this is not a matter of little importance. It is an important international matter, and we need to have patience, and believe me, we are working very hard with all of our colleagues in the contact group, and we remain united. We have the principles we are following.
Are you happy that the talks have been delayed then?
Which talks?
The status talks.
We're not satisfied. We are facing the reality. The electoral process in Serbia is absolutely democratic. Every country has the right to conduct elections and to draft the new constitution, etc. It's a reality which we have to take into account. Our ministers said that we would not like the process to be delayed unilaterally, and we would like to move the process forward. But again, we have to take into account what goes on around, and if one of the parties has democratic elections, we do have to respect that.
But what if you are lonely in the contact group, that it is only you who support the territorial integrity, and the rest of the contact group want to recognize some form of independence? What if you are lonely?
Well, I will not disclose, of course, how it is going in the contact group, etc. It is an internal matter, but so far we managed to find common positions in the contact group, and I hope this will stay as it is now.
Will the majority win?
There is no majority rule there.
Everybody has to have a consensus in the end.
It's more or less, yes, a consensus principle.
And the same in the Security Council?
Absolutely, yes. Well, you know the procedures. 5 permanent members of the Security Council have the veto right. So any one of them is entitled to use it. The only thing I want to say in this regard is that we're not looking for that, and we hope that it will not come to that point, of course. But again, every single permanent member of the Security Council has the right of veto. Yes.
And if it comes to that, is Russia ready to use the veto for Kosovo? Is Kosovo important enough for Russia to use the veto to stop it become what Russia thinks is not a compromise?
My president said that if if there is an attempt to impose the decision which is unacceptable to Belgrade, Russia would use the right of veto in the Security Council. That's the voice of President Putin.
Do you like Albanians?
Yes, I have plenty of friends, starting from prison time, and it's interesting. It's both in the intellectual spheres and in the villages. Actually, in that time I managed probably to help some of the villages in the prison area, and still I enjoyed those relations.
Do you think that Kosovo should have some sort of relation? You have an office now. Do you think Kosovo should have some sort of relation with Russia?
We do. We do have relations with Kosovo. We have an office here. We have wonderful relations with political party leaders, with the leaders of the government. At this time, I can tell you that we had a meeting with Prime Minister Chekov this morning, and probably you know that some time ago he asked me to help him organize his visit to Moscow, and I can tell him that I informed Prime Minister today that I have received a positive answer from Moscow.
And why can't a normal person in Kosovo go to Russia for a visit?
I don't know any reason for anybody not to go to Russia.
Russia does not accept UNMIK travel document. I cannot now go on and
UNMIK documents, yes, that's the prerogative of every country.
Well, that's the documents we have.
Well, I believe that, a lot of people have different documents, and I know this, and I know people who go to Russia, believe me. That's a technicality on which we will have to work in the future. But again, it's a sovereign right of any country to accept or not accept this or that travel document. We traditionally, for certain reasons, do not accept, but this does not prevent, believe me, a lot of Kosovars going to Russia. I know many of them.
They do, but some don't go. I would like to go for Russian theater, for example.
Okay.
I can't go because I have a one-week passport.
Okay, let's set up a meeting and talk about it separately.
Okay, can you tell us that whether you will be advising the Russian government to accept at least UNMIK travel documents? Is that so symbolic? Why wouldn't Russian government accept travel document as such?
I'm not in the position to advise or not to advise, because this is purely a legal matter, and we do have our position formulated already, so I don't see the reason the way how I should advise.
But yes, but can you explain to the people why is the position like that?
Well, the position, I can tell you that the position is based on the international practice and United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Reynard, thank you for accepting us. First, I want to know how important is Kosovo for France?
Well, France, as an EU member, has a great interest in Kosovo. On top of that, we are, as you know, member of the contact group countries, which have a specific responsibility towards Kosovo. We were present and we organized the Rambouillet conference in the beginning of '99, and since then we've been involved in Balkan and Kosovo affairs very closely. Now our interest is to stabilize Kosovo and the Western Balkans in order to be able to prepare the future of those of the Balkan countries towards EU integration in the future.
Since it is clear that both sides, after now many months of negotiations, it looks like the sides do not agree on that solution of the status. They might agree on other things, but not on the status. Albanians want full independence, Serbs want Kosovo within Serbia. What is the way forward if both sides cannot agree to the preferred compromise?
As you know, we have a very important meeting on Friday, the 10th, in Vienna between Mr. Ahtisaari and the contact group political directors. They will examine the situation. Mr. Ahtisaari will present Again, he has already done it at the end of August. He has done it on the 20th of October. He will present the final package, the outlines of his final package, and the proposals that he's going to make to the parties in the different main. There were 4 major items which were dealt in the so-called technical negotiations.
Do you believe that the elections in Serbia are worth postponing the Kosovo status? How important are they? What are we to expect from these elections? Are they worth postponing or delaying a little bit the status in order to have a new government?
Yes, this is important to understand, and this is something that the Kosovo leaders have to understand. I can see that, of course, for them, delaying the process poses a certain problem, but we are trying to explain to them that delaying the process for a short period doesn't change the substance. We know where we are heading.
Where are we heading?
We are heading
towards independence?
Kosovo. Well, we know it will be a sort of a supervised independence, like we call it now. It will definitely not be what was in the Belgrade Serbian referendum. So, but as I mentioned, one of the basic principles of the contact group is that we are trying to stabilize the whole Western Balkans. So we have to be very careful working on the future Kosovo status. As I said, supervised independence, as it seems everybody knows what will be in the Ahtisaari package.
Do you believe Ahtisaari will mention the word independence?
No, it's not mentioned.
It's not mentioned?
No, it's not mentioned, but apparently from what I know, I haven't seen the document. From what I know, he describes a new system, the new organization of the Kosovar institutions. You can deduct that you have a sort of independence, but it is not mentioned.
Okay, then if that is so, we reach that point, and if it's up to the states individually to recognize Kosovo as independent or not?
It will be to the states, because the Security Council does not have in its functions, under the UN Charter, doesn't have the power to declare independence of Kosovo. It will be under the normal international law, like it was for Montenegro, like it happened for Montenegro since the Montenegrin referendum in June. Individual countries on a bilateral basis will or will not recognize the new situation of Kosovo. But as far as I know, in the Ahtisaari package, there is the definition of a new state, you can call it state, with international functions. Being able to join international organizations, to go into a treaty negotiation with foreign countries. Apparently he will put in his, he has put in his plan a quite comprehensive description of the new institutions. Of course, including...
So, can you just explain to our audience, if it will be substantially independence but not mentioned, why doesn't Ahtisaari mention the word independence?
I think mainly because going to the Security Council after that, the resolution which will then be voted, passed by the Security Council, will endorse the Ahtisaari package and will list the main conclusions of Ahtisaari. But as I said, as the Security Council does not have the authority to declare an independent country, this is why. And another reason, of course, is to we are trying to maintain the unity of the
in order to avoid for Russia to veto it out as well.
Exactly,
Yes?
of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. We know perfectly that out of the 5 permanent members, 2 will have a problem with that resolution. It's Russia and China, who are very reluctant. I don't need to go on that. And the French position in that is that Kosovo, it's another thing that I'm trying to explain to the Kosovo leaders when I meet them, is that Kosovo is a very small in the big international negotiations which are going on all the time around the world, and where the conflicts come to the table of the Security Council. Kosovo is not the biggest part. We have, just to mention the main questions which are being debated now in New York, as you know, we have Iran, we have North Korea, we have Lebanon, we have Sudan. Every major crisis in the world comes to the table of the Security Council, and on each occasion we need to have a consensus among the 15 members, but of course mainly among the 5 permanent members. So this is why, and I'm sure it's the position of the other Queen's members, this is why France wants really to work as far as we can to maintain Russia in the contact group consensus, which has been the case up till now. Up till now, you've seen that the New York communique of the 20th of September was endorsed by Russia. It was very difficult to negotiate this communique, and we hope that after the meeting of Friday in Vienna, we hope that this consensus will be maintained. Because we cannot afford, and this is in the interest of everybody, both of even the Kosovars, a status of Kosovo, a future status of Kosovo, which would not be endorsed by a consensus in New York of the Security Council, which would have to face a veto, then it would have to be, the resolution would have to be excluded from the agenda of the Security Council. And you know, when we have a veto, it takes months and months before we can again go back to work on a new proposal. So it would be, the worst case scenario would be that the Ahtisaari package goes to New York, we have a veto, 1 or 2 vetoes, it's taken out of the Security Council, and then we have direct bilateral recognition of the independence of Kosovo, but in a situation of conflict between Belgrade and Pristina. This we know it will be very difficult to avoid, and with a situation of division between the contact group and the permanent members. You see.
So what will happen if Russia vetoes out Ahtisaari's proposal?
They will not veto, because in the Security Council things are prepared in advance. When things come out in front of the cameras in the Security Council room, everything has been decided. So if we see, if in New York the 5 permanent members can guess that there will be such a situation of the Russian position be totally closed, we will not go up to the Security Council. So this will be very bad for everybody, because it will amount to freeze the situation until we can find an issue to the deadlock and go to the Security Council, being sure that we will, at least what we will aim is to have Russia and China abstain on the resolution.
So abstaining
is okay.
Is okay.
Yes, this is what I think will happen. But of course, I'm I'm not involved directly in the day-to-day, and I cannot guess what will happen, but this would be the best that we can maybe look for.
So when can people expect this meeting to happen, this final resolution coming to the Security Council, approximately?
Beginning of, I would say, the first term of next year. If, of course, now we have a question which is not solved. We have elections, parliamentary elections in Belgrade in December, January.
So is the contact group going to wait for this decision before it decides when it's, or before Ahtisaari comes out with his report? Is he going to wait for the Serbia's date for elections?
No. For the moment, what we've said up till now, up till today, is that Ahtisaari goes on in his schedule, knowing that nothing has been announced by the Serbian government.
So what's Ahtisaari's schedule? He goes out when with his report?
Ahtisaari's schedule is he presents his package to the contact group on Friday.
So his final package is presented on Friday?
Would be the broad lines, yes. Yeah. Then he would present it to both parties, to Belgrade and Pristina.
When? Next week? Or on Friday?
No, not on Friday, but sometime by the end of November.
Okay.
Then he had mentioned at what time the possibility of organizing a conference, another under the form of what he called in last July. You remember on the 24th of July there was this so-called elephants meeting.
Yeah. Between
President Tadic, Prime Minister Kostunica, President Seliu, and PM Ceku in Vienna. So he had in mind to have a sort of event of that sort by the end of November, beginning of December, to have a final possibility of the parties, both parties, agreeing on the final package which he will be presenting. But of course, this scenario is without elections in Belgrade. If Belgrade in the next days announces that elections will be held either at the end of December or now the dates which we've seen in the Belgrade press are 21st of January or even 4th of February.
Will Ahtisaari wait if that is so?
I don't know. Frankly, this will be discussed on Friday.
But if people speak and one of the opinions is yours, what will you say? Is it worth waiting for? Is it worth waiting, delaying the status? Delaying?
Yes, we think this is a French position, and we think that if Belgrade elections are called in a reasonable delay, I mean reasonable delay, the dates I just mentioned.
December.
Up to January, February, let's say. January, beginning of February, which seems reasonable. And so clearly we will advocate the French to, we will advocate to Ahtisaari to wait until then, until those elections, to present his package to the parties. Because once the elections are announced at a rather close date, we will be in mid-November, elections being in January, it's a rather close date. It's difficult. A government which is in an electoral campaign is not really in a position to go to Vienna, to this new elephants meeting, to talk on the future of Kosovo.
But you imagine
it's such an important item which would be the centerpiece in the campaign. We don't want that, because I hadn't finished my sentence just before, because as I said, one of our major responsibility is to ensure that all this process has a stabilizing effect on the region.
But so does it have stabilizing effect?
We want to stabilize. We don't want to destabilize the situation in Belgrade also.
Yes.
This is what the Kosovars have to understand.
But if it goes on till January and it takes a few months for the government to be formed in Serbia, which I assume is going to be another 2 or 3 months maybe until a government is formed, do you think that's a reasonable delay? That's worth waiting for?
This is my personal opinion. I don't think it's reasonable. No, it wouldn't be reasonable because we know that the formation of a government.
But you have to wait for a new government to be formed
until drag on.
Yeah.
No, because we will still have a president in place, President Tadic, if presidential elections are not held at the same time, and it seems that we are heading to a situation where we'll have only parliamentary elections, but that's what the press says. So I don't know, I'm not in the...
Yeah. So it's likely the president wouldn't change, but prime minister? Would the prime minister change? Or just the...
I don't know, yes, because we would have only parliamentary elections, and so the formation of government would be the appointment of new PM and the new ministers. But this cannot delay the process much more. You see, this is a
supervised independence, as you've phrased it. Will this be something that France will recognize? Will France be one of the countries to recognize this independence if it will be up to the countries themselves?
Certainly, if it is following a decision by the contact group and by the Security Council, of course. We will work on having a common EU position.
You believe there will be a common EU position?
We will try. We will try.
Who is likely to be problematic in the EU in accepting?
I don't know. I cannot talk for foreign countries. I don't know, but I know that some of the EU countries have certain reservations because of their own internal problems. Because international policy is only a prolongation of internal policy.
So, if it's up to the countries individually, will France, together with Britain, Germany, be one of the first to recognize it, or will you lead on as countries to recognize it, or will you wait on?
We will, well, of course, I'm speaking personally now, but personally, if I was asked my advice by my government, I would say, we will follow our colleagues in the Quint and the contact group, and as long as we have a process which will have been endorsed.
What if Serbia says to France, you will really upset us if you recognize Kosovo's independence? Will France think it is worth ruining the relationship with Serbia?
This, of course, is a real question. I can't answer what will be the French government's position at that time, because it will be a decision obviously taken by the highest authorities in France.
There is a
perception. I mentioned my personal opinion, but of course I cannot.
So you will advise your government?
If they asked me, I would advise. The logic would be that we follow the decision. It would be we would have endorsed in the contact group and the Security Council. So this seems to be to me the basic logic.
Yes, this is a great logic, but in a sense you don't have the logic of what the perception is, the classic perception is about France, that it's the traditional friend of Serbia. What do you think about this perception? Is it true?
Of course we are, and I hope we'll remain a friend of Serbia, but we are also a friend of Kosovo and a friend of all the countries in the region.
If there is a new government and they don't accept Kosovo's independence, which is likely, what will international community do?
Of course, this is very difficult to say.
Will there be pressure?
Yes, there will be pressure. But what kind of pressures, I clearly don't know.
Financial?
I don't know, because we always said that Kosovo there wasn't any trade-off between, for instance, the negotiation of the ASA, the stabilization agreement with Belgrade and Kosovo. Those are totally separated items.
They are?
No, I said they are totally separate.
They are separate.
They are. That's what I said. We have, but as you know, there is a conditionality which has been fixed between the negotiation of the ASA and the cooperation with The Hague and the Mladic affair.
So in the future, will this be part of conditionality if the international community decides to support independence and Serbia
Frankly,
doesn't?
I don't know. For the moment, as I said, we have treated Kosovo as a totally separate item with the relationship between EU countries and Serbia. That's why we say this is not a precedent. You know that countries like Russia say it will be a precedent, and Ahtisaari, and we back him in this, so he says, and he will demonstrate in his package that all the question of the Statute of Kosovo cannot be understood if we don't go back to the 89, going back on the 74 status, the Milosevic policy. Kosovo is a result of the Milosevic policy. So this is why it has nothing to do with the rest of the Serbian situation.
So can Serbia in the future enter European Union, at some future enter European Union, without having even recognized Kosovo as a new state, if everybody else recognizes?
You are mentioning exactly the case we have now with Cyprus, as you know.
Yeah.
And as you know, the Greek part of Cyprus is in, and the Turkish occupied north of Cyprus has been left out for the moment. So you are mentioning a situation which already exists. We have found a sort of solution with the case of Cyprus. I'm sure we'll find a solution for the Kosovo. But it will certainly be a problem.
Is Kosovo going to become a new Cyprus?
You have to hope not, but integration of the Serbian parts of Kosovo will be a long process. Ahtisaari says it. This is why he has asked the unity team here to be very generous. They were rather generous in their offers in decentralization.
What if Belgrade sees that in the end solution is looking likely to be independence, and they start putting the new strategy to divide Kosovo? If they see they can't get Kosovo's territory, to divide it. How much energy is there among you, diplomatic community, to stop the division of Kosovo?
There will be a very strong energy. As you know, we are planning now the future international civilian mission, which will be present in Kosovo for the implementation of the future status.
But what will this new mission do better in the north, for example, if...
The new mission will have a special office in the north.
So does this mission, but that doesn't make the north more Kosovan. It is more Serbian than Kosovan.
Yes, but it will change everything, you know, because when the new international mission comes into Kosovo for the status, we will have a final status which will say the Kosovar new institutions are responsible for their own affairs within the territory of the whole of Kosovo.
And there will be a border post, and
there will be an international...
EU will send international officers in the border.
The ABL will be transformed in an international frontier.
You think the North is likely to be better with the EU mission than it is now with UNMIK mission?
Yes, because UNMIC didn't have a clear mandate, like it didn't have it had the mandate under 1244 to set up provisional institutions, but without a precise agenda and deadline. This was, the different SRSGs are not to blame, because they had the mandate to administer the Kosovo without a precise goal. Now the goal we have it. We will have it, I mean, in the future ICO, the International Civilian Office, they will know that they are there for a very limited period of time. As you know, it will be 2 years at the beginning, then after the first 2 years we'll have a review of the total
This is what
situation.
UNMIC says, that it's going to be very few, and now it's 7 years we're into with an UNMIC administration. Are we going to see that longer time with EU mission?
No, it will be much shorter. I said it would be, the first period would be 2 years, and if everything is okay after 2 years, everybody will leave.
You sure?
The rule will be now that the Kosovars will be managing their own affairs. It will be, when I say supervised independence, it says what it means. It will not be a sort of protectorate, you know. We will have a new UN resolution, we hope, we are working on that. 1244 will be terminated, as you know, and we were working on there will be a transition period, of course, until UNMIC is phasing out, has handed over all its powers to the Kosovar institutions. A very small power will be maintained in the international future ICO. In matter of rule of law, as you know, organized crime, and very limited functions. But for the rest, the situation will be, I would say, normalized. We have to hope so. We're working on that.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Jo vetëm që Serbia e Kosova nuk po pajtohen për zgjidhjen e statusit Kosovës, por sipas gjitha gjasave fuqitë botërore do të luftojmë deri në Këshill të Sigurimit me mendime të kundërta për statusin e Kosovës.
Andrej, a ma mirë në Kosova në Amerikë. Scooby-Doo-up-boo, bam!
Unë jam Andrej Kosovës, edhe për këtë mision kam vendosur edhe unë të shkoj në New York City për me fol me Amerikanë të rëndëmt se si mendojnë ata për statusin final të Kosovës. Mirë po, nuk kam pas mundësi me shku në New York. Veç bonë që kisha jemi në Amerikë tash, edhe le të shohim si mendojnë ata Amerikanët për Kosovën. Hello, excuse me. We're here in New York City talking with some Americans. Hi, excuse me. We've come over here to New York City to talk with some Americans about what you know about Kosovo. Do you know about Albanians in Kosovo? We've come here to New York City to speak with some Americans about what they know about Kosovo. Could you give us your comments? Shqiptarje. Are you a German American?
No. Di anglisht?
Shqip, a flet shqip?
Albana, Kosovë.
Albana.
Shqip.
Diaspora, ha? Që shqiptare Amerikës. Si ndihesh veten këtu në Amerikë?
Në Amerikë?
Po.
Në Amerikë të Prishtinës.
Lutem, veç, a mund të spes me aktru pak si jemi në Amerikë se për misionin. Po bën me prap. Këtu jemi në New York, edhe si mendon si ndihesh këtu në Amerikë?
Shumë mirë. Fort mirë.
Shqiptar jeni? Shqiptar. Që diaspora. Lutem, veç bëno që kisha jemi në New York, okay? Më të bo një reportazh. Si pëjdohet juve këtu në New York City, në Amerikë?
New York City, nice.
A janë vidësuar mjaftueshme amerikanët për çështjet në Kosovë?
Po shumica as se njohin Kosovën.
Tu jemi me një diaspora Amerikës, si po kalon këtu në Amerikë?
Mirë, super.
We've come here to New York City to do some interviews with people
In New York
in
City?
America. What they just wanted to in New York City. To do an interview with people in America, what they know about Kosovo and what they think about the final status. Should there be independence in Kosovo, you think?
Yeah, I think it should be.
Do you know much about Albanians in Kosovo?
Not at all, because I'm living in New York.
Sot po takon me shumë diaspora nga Kosova. Jemi ardhur në New York, veç bonus që kishte jemi në New York, okay? Jemi ardhur në New York e shumë zanzi keni këtë vend. Çesa je këtu në Amerikë?
7 muaj.
7 muaj? Super.
We think that Kosovo is a very nice city, you know, we have a nice place, you know, and we have, there are very nice people. And
I think that they're quite good people. They should get what they want.
A ka me pas pavarësi në muaj të ardhshëm? Për atje?
Për Kosovë.
Për Kosovë atje, po.
Për Kosovë atje, ma merr mendja që po, deri ka shkurri.
A beson që Amerika ka me ndihmu Kosova për me realizu pavarësi në vitin e ardhshëm?
Shpresojmë që po.
Faleminderit shumë. So, if there is independence in Kosovo, do you think this will promote a better image of American foreign policy?
Sorry again.
Oh, don't worry about that. That's a stupid question. This is great news. I was worried that Americans are just thinking about Iraq and not Kosovo. Thank you very much.
We are thinking about Kosovo.
Edhe me ndodhë që bëhet pavarësia, a kisha kthy në ditë në Kosova, në vendlindjen tonë?
Patjetër. Atje është ardhja vendlindja ime, si çdo popull që ka dëshirë vendlindjen e vet të jetojë.
So who'd you vote for today, the Republicans or the Democrats?
The Democrats.
Great. Thanks a lot for the interview.
Welcome, anytime you want. Have a nice time here in New York.
We will.
See you.
Hey, faleminderit. S'kam pas lek me fluturu në Amerikë me bo reportazh. Të bëj këtu edhe besoj që
shitet, a?
Njerëz e hajnë.
Ja, no.
Shikuesit hajnë shumë sene këtu. Well, si e shifni prej reportazhin ton shumë hullumtues këtu në Amerikë? Është të vërtet që Amerikanët kanë energji edhe fuqi për të shtuar pavarësi apo independence për Kosovën. Edhe dy, kemi vrejt që ka shumë shqiptar në Amerikë. Unë jam dhënë i Kosovës. Faleminderit. Faleminderit edhe natën e mirë. Ju këtu në Amerikë nuk kapni RTK shumë mirë, a? Faleminderit, hajtëm.
Shikues e nderuar, mirëmbrëma dhe mirë se vini. Jo vetëm në emisionin Jeta në Kosovë, por në ditëlindjen tonë. Sot bëhen 1 vjet që kur emisioni Jeta në Kosovë shfrytëzon hapësirën mediale të transmetuesit publik të Kosovës për t'i komentuar zhvillimet publike në Kosovë. Përmes këtij emisioni janë bërë presione publike, janë kritiku paregullësit, janë ngritë çështje disa thonë me vend e disa thonë me arrogancë, prepotencë e të tjera. Mirë po, ajo që është me rëndësi është se 1 vit pas prodhimit dhe transmetirit të emisionit Jeta në Kosovë, jemi në gjendje të kthejmë kokën dhe të shohim se çfarë është bërë gjatë këtyre 12 muajve. Kush po i qet bombat?
Sigurimi atlet, i cili ta dhej.
Arrestu nuk ka lidhje kush është, çka është, s'na intereson.
Unë ta mjeli, ma mirë që ti më tregon tash, ku janë bulicat.
Po, la keq fi unë.
Janë sulmu makinat e jo ministrat. Janë sulmu makinat.
Hajtë se kur gjë së bo, hajtë se ja bojmë dyqysh.
Are you afraid of Albanians?
Nëse ju bleni 3 herë sa buxheti i Kosovës, s'pe bleni Kosovën krejt.
Nuk më duhet me blej, do të me blej jashtë me blej në Kosovë.
Peticja za nezavisnost Kosovo.
No, I'm not afraid of Albanians.
Da?
Ballkani është korrupsion dhe infit.
I kom veç financu shkollime. 3 vjetë si që kanë punua dhe mësë.
Apo da me ne, po, pa buje.
Cili o libri fundi që i ki lexu?
Më falë edhe njëherë, në Universitetin e Prishtinë blenë dhe shitën titujt akademik, sikurse në minimarketin Maxi.
Çka është libri fundi që i ki lexu, për shembull jashtë shkollor?
Urdhno, edhe njëherë.
Cili o libri fundit jashtë shkollor që i ki lexu? Gjatë tërkohës është përfolur se jeta në Kosovë nuk lejon që njerëzit të nxirren lehtë. Tani do t'i shohim disa raste kur në fakt më kanë rrshqit, kur kanë shpëtuar disi si më lehtë. Rastet si? A ka çdo parti politike në të tashmë shërbim të vet informativ, si besojnë qytetarët?
Flitet se ka, apo?
Po gjithashtu flitet.
Do të thonë, zoti Lulzim e përmeni fare, do të thonë se çka ka ndëgju, Unë po flas personalisht për çështjen se është përmend instituti është laku.
Kush ju ka finansu në vitin 2004?
Besoj që këtë vit do ta bëjmë 5 vjetorin e themelimit të institutit, ku do të jeni pranishëm si
transparent. A mund ta dim, masi jeni kaq transparent, jeni institucion i regjistruar, kush është donatori juaj më i madh? Me siguri keni shumë të ndryshme, po donatori më i madh, si çdo organizatë.
Ju thash edhe më herët ju thash, ne do të shumë shpejt do ta kemi për vjetorin e themelimit dhe aty do të jenë të ftuar të gjithë donatorët. Do të kenë
mirënjohje. Po pse na thoni sot neve? Na ju pyetëm, rritja e transparencës është pyetje me luftu korrupsionin. Na ju pyetëm kush ju finanson, po na intereson për hir të transparencës kush ju finanson. Për shembull, për hir të transparencës me ditë kujt për shembull jep një llogari, kush e finanson organizatën e ju?
Sigurisht, unë të tregova, domethënë pak më herët, llogari, domethënë na jemi të regjistruar në UNMIK, domethënë atëherë kur jemi regjistruar, tash është e bartën, kuptohet në shërbime publike, në rregullore, domethënë nuk kërkohet, të lutem, lejo të përgjigjen. Në rregullore thuhet, brenda vitit duhet të dorëzohet një raport, një njoftim financiar.
Mirë, unë si jam UNMIK, unë po kërkoj si qytetare e Kosovës ta di institucioni juaj për shembull kush e finanson, pasi është folur shumë për te, shumë është me rëndësi ta dim hapta sot.
Do të thonë, për shembull kemi disa firma vendore, ju tregova, disa firma vendore. Është e drejtë e imja, të lutem, është e drejtë e imja, nuk është kjo mos transparencë, të lutem, për shkak se ne mund ta bëjmë një mision për institutin, dhe në këtë vend ku jemi sot, të gjitha fakturat nga viti 2000 dhe në vitin 2005 do t'i keni të hapura në shikim. Nuk është çështje mos transparence.
Asnjë fond i qeverisë apo i tatim paguesve të Kosovës nuk ka ardhur te ju ndonjë.
Të lutem, ne kemi donatorët, ne domethënë nuk bëjmë buxhet rezervë. Ne bëjmë një projekt.
Pse ju japin këto firma? Pse ju japin këto firma?
Sepse ne bëjmë një projekt, ashtu funksionojmë, ne domethënë apo ne kemi mund të lidhemi me organizata të jashtme ato, por s'kemi provu deri më sot,
ndoshta nesër. Çfarë shërbimi bëni ju këtyre firmave nëse ato ju japin donacione? Kam nevojë të sqaroj një gjë, sepse shumë nga ju keni menduar që emisioni ynë ka lidhje diçka me ndrimin e ish zëdhënësit të SHPK-s. Pra, Për gjithë ju atje që ftojni të merrni pjesë në emision, mund t'ju garantojmë që jeta në Kosovë askënd se ka qit nga puna. Deri tash. Fjala është për emisionin ton për bashkëpunimin e gazetarëve me polici. Ku ke qenë momentin kur ra?
Momentin që jam rani, kam qenë afër shtëpisë kryeshefit, ku është bërë fjalë për një lloj korrupsioni që kam shku me hulumtu atë rast. Në moment, unë më kanë duke intervistuar një qytetar, kalimtar të rastit, edhe nuk më ditë asgjë, dikush më kam shupi për masit edhe më ka hup vedia.
Pse është përdorur dhuna nëse nuk ka?
Nuk është përdorur dhuna, është bërë pengesë e paarsyeshme.
Pengesë e paarsyeshme është njeriu talivanosit, është pengesë e paarsyeshme.
Mirë, ndajherë mund talivanosit edhe prej momentet që ndodhet prej asaj që nuk e pret, po rraja nuk ka pas. Kjo nuk është dëshmuar, nuk e kam pa edhe në sekuenca filmike.
Se ka arpi për macit edhe nëse kam pa dhe ma kam shu.
Je pengu drejton, ndryshe është më pengu, ndryshe është me
kur ta
orra.
vedin dikush pi për macit,
është pengu me dajak është pengu, a?
Nuk është pengu me dajak, jo.
Si është pengu, ka pas, është
ka pas për leshje rreth kasetës, ta morën kasetën.
Po, veç fillimisht ata na kanë shu.
Rraja nuk ka pas.
Një parti politike së cilës vazhdimisht ju kemi kthy, si temë emisionit ton është LDK-ja. Kjo nuk është pse ne jemi politikisht të njanshëm, por sepse ka pasur ngjarje shumë dramatike në këtë parti, në lidhjen dramatike të Kosovës, LDK.
Fraksionet në botën normale të partitë politike zyrtarizohen me statute edhe me kështu të ne nuk asnjëra prej partive nuk i ka të zyrtarizuara fraksionet. Prandaj gjithçka që vepron në atë formë është jo legjitime brenda partisë. Ndërkohë që ato po funksionojnë. Edhe atë, nëse nuk duam të spekulojmë, do të referohemi këshilltarit të kryeministrit të Kosovës, zotit Naser Ugova, i cili është edhe antar i familjes së presidentit Ndjeri, i cili vetë ka shkruar dhe ka distribuar në gjitha mediat që spekulimet aso kohë për smundjen dhe vdekjen e mundshme të zotit Rugova kanë ardhur prej një pjese të opozitës, ka thonë ai, dhe hienave, siç ka thonë ai, brenda LDK-s. Tash na po i referohemi burimit i cili është me emën edhe i cili është zyrtar i lartë nga radhët e LDK-s që punon në qeveri.
Kush janë hienat në LDK?
Unë se besoj që ka hiena në LDK.
Zoti Rugova e ka thonë vetë, unë nuk po them që ka apo s'ka, mirë po ai ka thonë.
Zoti Naser Rugova është doktor me profesion edhe duket se ka qelluar nocionit.
Mirë, kush janë ajo që ka përshujtëra hiena?
Me mirë do të ishte thot fraksion.
Edhe unë se besoj që ka hiena në kuptimin klasik të fjalës, domethënë.
Hienat janë një simbolik shumë e keqe në biologji, a?
Hienat, domethënë janë disa lloj shkallëve që vrapojnë pas.
Sa problem dihet çka?
Okej, mirë po kjo ajo që po thash apo, se LDK nuk është mësuar me debat, LDK nuk është mësuar me fraksione brenda partisë. Edhe se
tash po thuni që ka, so mësu tash, ka fraksione.
Po mirë, po deri tash nuk është mësu, se ka qenë presidenti edhe herë po përsëris. Kur ka fol presidenti, aty është ndalë çdo debat. Besoj, e di me vedije po them është shumë jo demokratike, mirë po shpresoj që shefi i zyrës amerikane do të jetë ai që do të na zgjidhë këtë problem në fundit. Sepse pa një votim, pa një marrëveshje me opozitën në parlament për çështjen e kryetarit.
Mos i zëdhën si zyrës amerikane?
Unë po them që është shumë jo demokratike. Mirë po, si që është treguar edhe më herët, si duket prap do të kërkohet një imponim, një bindje e zotit tha që të votoj pro kryetarit Fatmir Sejdiu, dhe në këtë mënyrë dalim për një krize të përkohshme, sepse kjo do të rigjenerohet. A shihni çfarë situate jemi?
Do të aguzon.
Vetëm po duam të thonë gjendjen në cilën jemi. Pas 6 vjetësh me këtë qeveri edhe me këtë menaxhim shef nuk ka rrym, është një situatë depresionit të thellë.
Sot kalojmë nëpër kriza ose nëpër një proces shumë të rëndësishëm. Kushtimisht problemin e Mitrovicës. A ka qëndrim kryesia e LDK-s për problemin e Mitrovicës? Nuk ka. Ne na kalojnë problemet në grupin parlamentar, diskutojmë, kërkojmë plane. Nuk ka. Kjo zguzon me na ndodh lidhjen demokratike. Ta përsëris edhe një lidhje demokratike po e bën barrën e procesit pavarësisë Kosovës dhe ne duhet spaku të jemi të përgatitur që para elektoratit, para popullit,
do me thënë nuk qenë ka bash LDK-ja shkollë, akademi për parti tjera. Në çka keni politik atëherë, kallëzoni, në çka keni politik të caktuar, përveç pavarësisë Kosovës që e ka çdo parti?
Lidhja demokratike është akademi për parti tjera. Edhe ta përsëris, lidhja demokratike është model për regionin. për shtetet e regionit. Lidhja Demokratike është partia e parë në Evropën juglindore e cila ka filluar ta kundërshtoj komunizmin, ju lutem shumë. Dhe është model për regionin. Lere mo akademi për parti.
Faleminderit shumë, faleminderit. Po tingëllon pak si fushat elektorale, mirë po ju shikues nderuar vendosni. Faleminderit që ishit këtu. E ju shikues nderuar vendosni a është LDK-ja, a është akademia, shkollë fillore, mbetet te ju të vendosni. Mirë, ka diçka që nuk është as akademia, as shkollë fillore. Të shohim si kanë qenë punët në Universitetin e Prishtinës pasi ra muhabeti i shkollave.
Parregullësitë në Universitetin e Prishtinës janë strukturalisht rregulluar. Pra, parregullësia as është parregullësi ta zëm kur një profesor vije vetëm kur ka kohë të lirë në Universitetin e Prishtinës për të ligjëruar. As është parregullësi ta zëm humbja e fletparaqitjeve. As është parregullësi për shembull kur nuk ka literaturë. As është parregullësi ta zëm kur edhe ajo literaturë që është, shumica e profesorëve ose një pjesë e profesorëve tonë janë zonë në plagiaturë që kanë kompiu tezat e doktoraturës ose dhe magjistraturës. As është parregullësi ta zëm kur shumica e titujve akademik prej magjistraturave dhe dete doktoraturat bëhen në mënyrë më jo publike të mundshme. Pra nëse vazhdohet me këto, Universiteti i Prishtinës do të mund të prodhojë tituj akademik, po jo akademik. Pra, në Universitetin e Prishtinë blen dhe shitën titujt akademik, sikurse në minimarketin Maxi.
Se diu e din shumë mirë se këta student unionit, po flas për atje nuk po di për Elbasanin, këta janë shumë të organizuar që ta çojnë në vend porosin e PDK-s dhe të kryesisë saj në universitet. Sepse nëse lëshojmë universitetin po i hupën pozicionet. Po, le të luftojnë për këtë, po e kanë gabim. Sepse duhet luftojnë për profesorët e mirë. Dhe unë po them, ju është mirë të protestoni dhe të arxhoni ministrin e arsimit, jo për zgjedhjet në universitet, se veç diçka. Jo. Jo të kom thonë, jo. Më fal, ti ke munu disa herë, po kur s'ke mujt, as nuk mundesh. As këtë s'ke me mujt që është u zbatu ligjit. Në momentin kur e shke ligjit ti ke merxu. Deri tash ai me disa elemente të vogla po e zbaton ligjin dhe unë e mbështes. Por, do t'ju thëmë studentëve, protestoni pranë ministrisë dhe kërkoni përgjegjësinë e ministrit për cilësinë në universitet, për korrupsion në universitet, për hajnin në universitet.
Çka studiantit?
Fakultetin juridik.
A çka është libri i fundit që e ke lexuar, për shembull jashtëshkollor?
Urdhno? Edhe një herë.
Cili është libri i fundit jashtëshkollor që e ke lexuar? Si student, si shembull i dijes që është e dashur me qenë studenti. Cili është libri i fundit që e ke lexuar?
Më fal edhe një herë,
Cili është libri i fundit jashtëshkollor që e ke lexuar?
Kemi pas kohë të lexojmë libra sepse jemi që më thonë do sfida të cilat unë mendoj që në universitet kjo situatë e cila është tash do të vret edhe pak më vonë, nëse ka qenë një rektor i kontestuar në kohën kur ka qenë profesor Arsim Bajrami, ka qenë një gjendje jo e mirë. Nëse ka qenë udhëzimi i parë i ministrisë një gjendje jo e mirë, unë mendoj që situata e cila është tash në universitet do të jetë edhe më keqe se dy.
A lexoni ju? A lexoni ju? Cili është libri i fundit që keni lexuar ju?
Mendoj që mos më lexu nuk kisha kthy fare.
Mirë, cili është libri i fundit që keni lexuar?
Unë kam lexuar shumë libra, nuk më kujtohet se cili është libri i fundit. Mirë, po mund të them që i kam 39 provime të kryer në indeks, ndërsa kam vetëm një provim që ta diplomoj fakultetin.
Mirë, a mundeni me qenë shembull i dijes e me tregu një libër të fundit që e keni lexuar, domethënë po kom qef me përfasu një student si dikush që i lexon?
Unë mendoj që gjithë studentët e Universitetit të Prishtinës i lexojnë literaturën dhe i lexojnë librat. Vetë fjala student jep me kuptu që ki të bëjë me studime dhe me shkencë, edhe mendoj që studentët nuk
Po e di mirë, po unë e pyeta kolegun e juaj, ai më shpjegoi për rektorin për Arsim Bajramin kur e pyeta për libra. Kam përshtypjen që ju tonkon s'keni kohë mu marrë me mësimet e
Mund të them që libra e fundit që kam lexuar është libra e provimit Dinamika, që është një material shumë voluminoz, ndoshta jashtëshkollor, nuk kam pas kohë.
Pas gjysmë viti, gazetarët tanë hulumtues e kanë hulumtuar rastin Elbasani. Tash, disa muj pas emisionit, të kom pyet një 3 herë, po të pyes për të 4-ën herë, ke lexuar ai libër?
Po.
Cilin libër?
Ne jemi konë edhe në zonën, mirë po tash kur isha në Shqipëri, kur ishëm vizit, atje disa libra i bleva, ato libra ishte Kodi da Vincit një, jam të lexu, Otellat Shakespeare të disa një komplet, kështu që jam ka lexuar ka pa kur po kam kohë.
Do të thonë cilin libër e ke lexu krejtësisht prej që ki dalë jeta në Kosovë?
Jeta në Kosovë, po unë tash jam të lexu Kodin e da Vincit dhe disa libra tjerë. Kështu kur po kam kohë ka pak, mirë po tash kemi qenë në Norvegji, kemi qenë në pushime, edhe pak më shumë jemi në zonën.
Mirë, çka po të lëm përshtypje te Kodi da Vincit për shembull? Unë shumë na për çka po bëhet fjala.
Po unë mendoj që tash kam filluar me lexu dhe halos me të jap ndonjë koment.
Në emisionin tonë kemi pasur njerëz të vegjël, njerëz të mëdhej, njerëz vjerit të cilëve ka qenë ekspert prej vitit 1987. Është i familjarizmit, është i lidhur edhe me ju. Ju e kanë fotografuar, për disa ditë pash fotografinë e vjerit tuaj që mirëte pjesë në Feronikel, për shembull. Çka ka lidhje vjeri juaj me Feronikel?
Kjo është që po ta marr një shembull. Në Partinë Komuniste të Shqipërisë është akuzu djali i Mehmet Shehut se e ka marrë një vajzë balliste. Dhe krejt komiteti është grumbullu pse djali Mehmet Shehut e ka marrë dhe e kanë detyruar njerin deri me vënë të vrasje.
Çka ka lidhje vjeri juaj me Feronikelin?
Këto janë idetë komunizmit. Këto janë idetë komunizmit. Ndigjoni. Vjehri im është pej 87-ës, kur unë ndoshta kam qenë fëmijë, ai është zëvendës drejtor në Feronikel. Dhe të thuhet që ministri Dugolli ka qitë vjerin, kjo është absurd.
Pse është edhe në bord për licencimin e naftës? Pse është edhe në bord për licencimin e...
Ato janë çështje, bordi është ekspert, domethënë dhe është përcaktuar nga disa ministri. Dhe në rast se dikush do ta përcaktonte...
A se shihni si konflikt të interesave këta?
Po nuk është konflikt, lutem, se nuk është i punësuar.
Zotni Pacolli, jeni të interesuar të jeni në politikë?
Shiqoni, flasmi për Kosovën. Edhe